Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of RE307, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Last Human, written by L. Sporno. Silence reigned on the bridge of the Imperial battlecruiser Kevorkian in exchange. Every one of the Confederation's 8 primary species were represented in the battlecruiser's command crew. All were quiet. Some thought Alpha Commander Lilta was quiet out of fear and trepidation. What would the entrapped human vessel do? What weapons did it have at its disposal? No human vessel, yet encountered during the 1,000 Years' War, had ever been bereft of either military hardware or some uniquely human-rigged contraption that could be wielded as a weapon. Lilta remembered his days as the Omega Waste Disposal Technician, as lowly a ranked as one might find aboard a Confederation warship. He had barely made it to his escape pod before the human civilian transport had rammed the light cruiser Confederated Harmony, taking both together into the fires of damnation. Humans would suicide themselves in irrational attempts to strike a blow. They would attack with wielding torches, with rocks, even the claws and teeth. They were as ferocious a species as the universe, and the Confederation more specifically, had ever known. Only the massive technological superiority and orders of magnitude greater population of the Confederation had tipped the scales in their favor. Even then, the 1,000 Years' War was not so named for the brevity of the conflict. Still others were quiet, out of intense concentration. The human vessel was a hodgepodge collection of parts salvaged from other vessels. Not all of them human themselves. It was smallish, barely larger than a Confederation destroyer, but bristling with possible weapon signatures, much more than even the Confederation heavy cruisers would possess. Enough, reflected Lilta. The human vessel might tear itself to pieces if its commander dared to fire them all at once. The human vessel has ceased acceleration. Drive signature indicates critical cascade failure of the power plant. Core rejection in progress, Beta Commander Ilkis explained, breaking the silence. This is it, Lilta thought. The last humans. At least he thought it was the last one. The first few centuries of the 1,000 Years' War had seen several human empires spawn on the edge of Confederation space, even after their homeworld of Terra Prime had been eradicated by sea fractional bombardment. Each time, the humans came in great cascades, hell-bent on revenge against the Confederation. Each time, they lost, and more planets were eradicated. Each time, some number of humans escaped to infest another part of space and grow strong again. Confederation warships spent decades in the void between the stars, tracking them all down. Trillions of sentients, perhaps hundreds of trillions, had died in the 1,000 Years' War. Now, as the humans said, the curtains were closing on that epoch of history. Approach slowly. I want to capture it intact if possible, Lilta ordered, tapping his console with a projected flight path. We need their computers intact to see if there are any more of them. But Alpha, Ilkis protested, surely they will just wipe them. Perhaps, Lilta admitted. Then again, if they are the last, perhaps they will not bother. Either way, we must try to obtain what information we can. Ilkis clearly did not agree, but knew better than to continue questioning his Alpha. Betas had an important role in bringing up alternative points of view, but this was tempered by the supreme authority invested in the Alpha. To bring it up once was duty, to do so twice was insubordination. Weapons ports opened on the human vessel, as it maneuvered with chemical thrusters to bring them to bear. With its ion engines destroyed, it bordered on statistically impossible that the vessel could even adjust course enough to make landing at safe port. They were dead already, the chase having exhausted the hodgepodge vessel's overgunned, underpowered frame to the point of critical damage. There were also humans, which meant that they would try to survive, or fight even if survival was impossible. Anyway, a wave of missiles broke from the human warship's spinal mounts. They were fast, nimble, and impossibly advanced. Toward the end of the war, the Confederation's technological advantage had fallen away, and now, it seemed, finally been eliminated completely. It was too late for the humans, though. though the Kovorian exchange possessed inferior missiles and point defense weapons. It also possessed far more of them. Most of the missiles were eliminated, and of the 3 which broke the battlecruiser's point defense, 1 missed entirely, drawn off by decoys. Another splashed mostly harmlessly against the ship's strongest prow armor. Armor plate was vaporized in the focused nuclear blast, but there was enough of it to prevent serious damage to the ship. The third, however, hit an aft maneuvering thruster, boarding it away entirely and causing sympathetic detonations all along the rear half of the battlecruiser. Lolta was jostled terribly in his crash couch. Alarms rang all across the bridge, and Ilkus cursed loudly, invoking the ancient gods. "Emergency power forward thrusters. Steer the forward thrusters only. Aim prow towards the enemy. Maximum acceleration. Fire full salvo the moment you're in range," Lolta called out orders, and his crew hurried to obey. The superior range of the human missiles meant that the Kevorkian exchange had to survive a gauntlet to close with the human vessel. But it was working. Lolta's command had been badly lamed, but the human cruiser could barely maneuver at all. It was almost worth lobbing missiles at the vessel past their power fuel limit. But even a lamed human vessel could surely swat away missiles that couldn't do anything but move in a straight line anymore. The rail guns were likewise not much use yet. Even with the thruster control, the human vessel could dodge mag rail projectiles. For now. The closer they got, the more difficult it would be for human warship to dodge. Another wave of human missiles launched towards him. This time, his point defense computers and his crew had learned enough about the missile capabilities to prevent serious damage. Another missile struck the prow armor, and this time there was structural buck along the glasses, but the armor held well enough to avoid the repeat of the disastrous first salvo. "In range, Alpha," Ilkus reported. Kevorkian exchange shuddered as the launchers cycled. The human cruiser's point defense was clearly less advanced, or perhaps less well-maintained than her missiles. Still, she stopped most of the missiles, most not being enough. Multiple hits registered on Lolta's console, and the enemy warship began to vent atmosphere. Her power shut down completely, and she drifted out of control entirely. She had, unfortunately, managed to get a final salvo of missiles out before the shutdown, however. And this time the prow armor did not hold. Gravity generators flickered and died, and the Kevorkian exchange ceased acceleration automatically, barely avoiding turning her crew into liquid biopaste. Restraints held the bridge officers in their crash couches. Zero-G fires burned throughout the forward half of the battlecruiser. Lolta's monitors were lit orange and crimson as many of his crew died in the almost beautiful weightless liquid fire. Then they shut off entirely as power cut off the prow. "Massive damage forward of frame 7, Ilkus reported. "Forward railguns destroyed. We've lost launchers 17 through 23. Gravity generators is in emergency shutdown mode." "Attend to damage control, Beta," Lolta ordered, turning to one of the Gammas, a youngling named Gil. "Gamma Sub-Commander Gil, you will direct further battle operations using remaining operable thrusters to slow us. Bring us alongside the enemy. Prepare boarding detachments for contact. If the human vessel shows any signs of powering up, fire all remaining railguns immediately. Do not wait for my order." Gil gulped visibly, but her crest fluttered in an affirmative. She was small for a reptilian, but her duty records indicated a ferocious temperament. She would not fail him in battle. "Vent the forward compartments. Get that fire out," Ilkus ordered into his station. "Vent immediately. If the fire reaches the forward magazine, I don't need to tell you what will happen. Do it. Do it now." If the Kevorkian exchange was hurting, the human situation was much worse. The cruiser wasn't even launching escape pods, either indicating that most of the crew was dead, or that they lacked even enough power to open the escape hatches. Evidently, the problem was the former. For, after several hours of maneuvering and boarding operations, the human vessel was finally under Confederation control. Under Gil's leadership, the boarding parties had managed to gain control relatively rapidly, even though a handful of surviving humans had stubbornly resisted them. Lolta had worried that the humans intended to self-destruct and take the boarding parties with them. It was a typical human tactic when outnumbered and outgunned. Even the most dedicated of Confederates would never do such a thing. Better to surrender and live to fight later if the odds were hopeless. It was partly the irrational will to fight that had resulted in the final annihilation of the humans to begin with. Had they surrendered to the Confederation, they would have lived. Had they run across the universe and never bothered the Confederation again, in time, the Confederation might have forgotten about them and given up the chase. But no. Again and again, the humans would fight. They had become demons. Even the name Terran had come to be associated with revenge in Confederation culture. To go on a Terran quest was to irrationally pursue vengeance in the face of all good sense. The last humans would die, but the name would live on forever in the lexicon of the Confederation parlance. Beta Ilkus reported tally. Gravity restored, Alpha. We've lost at least 700 in the forward section, Alpha. Many more are missing. We won't have a final tally until the rads are low enough for a manual check. Forward thrusters power is fully restored, however. Forward railguns have been wrecked. We have severe frame warping across the ship, Alpha. Even if we make it back to port, which is in the hands of the old gods now, and is, as the humans say, a coin flip, the ship will have to be scrapped. Bolter flicked his crest in acknowledgement. It didn't matter. This was the last battle of 1,000 years' war. He could wreck half the ships in the fleet, and Commander would still call it a victory. And they would be right to do so. We've recaptured the human commander, Alpha, Gil reported. He is the only survivor. The very last human, Bolter thought. The profound nature of the moment weighed upon him. He'd been fighting them his whole life. He didn't even know what life would be like once the task was complete. No one else in the known history of the Confederation bore the title People Killer. He would be the first, and he prayed to the old gods, hopefully, that he would be the last. Everything felt wrong about it. Nobody in the Confederation had desired this, not in many generations. It was a brutal necessity, no more. Bring him to me, Gamma. Here, Alpha, but he could see Gil silenced herself as Lilter scowled. It doesn't matter, Gamma. I want to talk with him before the end. We will never get a chance again. She bowed low, her crest nearly touching the deck. The partial gravity made the gesture awkward, but even a Gamma could sense the moment that was coming. Chains dangled from the human prisoner as he limped onto the bridge, flanked by 6 of the burly reptilian guards. Even those 6 might not have been enough for the human, were he not bound. Humans were far stronger than any Confederation race. Blood dripped down to the deck from a nasty wound on the human's leg. Oil and sweat stained his face, along with more blood. Whether it was his or belonged to another now dead, Bolter could not say. The human's hair was graying a little, which indicated advanced middle age, but the body still had the appearance of strength about it. Older perhaps, but not yet weakened by age. What do you want? The human was defiant, even now. Such was their way. You are the last, Bolter stated matter-of-factly in the human's language. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Yet there was something in the human's body language, alien though it was, that gave him away. He was the last, or thought of himself as such, anyway. Come, let us talk, human. Soon you'll be extinct. Only we, your enemies, will carry your memory. The human spit a bloody tooth onto the ground and grinned despite his pain. What do you say to your executioner? How's it going? How's the weather? Life is about information, human, Bolter explained. Genes are but one form of that. So is the knowledge of who and what you were. I don't want that to die with you. Let part of you live on through us. Ilkus shifted uncomfortably. This was near heresy in the Confederation, and yet the Beta said nothing, for he too could see the tragedy of the final end of the human world line. You killed us. There is nothing more to say, Fiend. If we live in your memory, I hope we live on as a nightmare. That somewhere in your consciousness, you remember us for how many of your kind we killed, how many of your planets we burned. When you feel the cold spike of fear, know that it is us, striking back from beyond death. Your empire is shattered wreck, your economy is destroyed, and the Confederation might not survive another war should anyone rebel against you. We did that. You're 8 species now, right? What happened to the other 2? The one we killed with the bioplague. The other one we unleashed the planet killers upon. Lilter felt anger welling up within him, but he pushed it aside. The human was trying to goad him into murder, trying to rob him of both the honor and the burden of the moment. Perhaps, human, it'll be as you say. Still, my gamma informs me that your computers are locked out, and I know from experience that attempting to unlock them will destroy them. Unlock them for me. Let the history contained therein survive your death to strike fear into us. That's what you want? Our history? Ha! Bullcrap. You're just afraid you didn't get the lost ship after all. It doesn't matter. I'd rather not torture you. I'd rather your passing was honorable, swift, and painless. Please do not make me torment you to get what I need, Lilter pleaded, genuinely not desiring for his enemy to end in such a fashion. He wanted both the data to confirm that the war was truly over and the history to live on in the Confederation archives. It was some measure of survival. It was the last chance at surrender. And I should have known he'd reject it, as the humans rejected all others. I could kill myself right now, at will, Alpha, the human began. You can torture me. I'll be dead at the moment you try. I let myself be captured, in the end, because I have a message I was bidden to give you. If we could not escape and colonize a new planet, it is the most important thing you'll ever learn about us. Silence reigned across the bridge once more. All ears turned to hear it. You burned Terra Prime centuries ago. Lilter said nothing, but an irrational fear began to overtake him. Something was wrong. Oh, we haunted you for centuries after that, didn't we? The 1,000 Years' War, you called it. Trillions of deaths. The greatest epic in all of galactic history. But it was never in doubt. Once our homeworld was destroyed, we could never reproduce fast enough, even with the cloning machines, nor could we recover our tech base quickly enough. You would always find us before we were ready. Lilter gestured in the affirmative. You say you know some of our history, Alpha. Have you ever heard of a place called Alamo? No? Well, then, I shall tell you a tale. A few centuries before we took to the stars, we fought a small war amongst ourselves. In this place, 200 men fought an army of thousands led by a man named Santa Anna. They fought for 2 weeks, and the last man killing many more of their enemies before they passed. Like you did with us, Lilter agreed. An honorable battle, yes, but pointless. Yes, but there was another part of that story. You have long thought our resistance was pointless, too. But you see, as the 200 fought, others of their cause used that time they bought to build an army which eventually crushed their enemies at the battle we call San Jacinto. Lilter's facial crest drooped with the implications. You are not the last human. We destroyed your homeworld, your colonies. We tracked every vessel. You are lying. The human smiled. We called it Terra Prime. Ever wonder about that? Why that name? Well, New Earth or New Terra, those just sounded like so cliché. So someone figured Terra Prime was a better name. It wasn't, not really, but we chose that anyway. That wasn't our homeworld. It was just where we landed when we got to this piece of shit galaxy. We were advanced scouts. It takes a long time to cross galaxies, you know. And the message home takes a long time, too. But it was sent. And they will come. Lilter frowned. You're lying. That was our Alamo, Santa Anna. 1,000-year Alamo, and maybe I'm Davy Crockett. Either way, your San Jacinto is coming soon. You can choose to believe me or not. Maybe I'm just saying all of this so we humans live forever in the fearful hearts of the Confederation. Or maybe not. But either way, you won't know until human ships bear down upon your worlds with a vengeance. The prisoner bit down hard, and poison flowed into his veins. The smile was still etched onto his face as he collapsed onto the deck, dead before he hit the floor. And as the human predicted, Lilter felt a spike of fear travel down his spinal column. It was fear, he knew, that truly would live forever. For the human had never said which galaxy his kind had come from, if indeed he was telling the truth, or how long the journey took. The Confederation would fear forever, or until the day of its own demise. Humanity would never truly die. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.